Right, hi. Okay, so should be live. I'm trusting the software. This is a new piece of software that I'm using, and I'm trusting that it is telling me that I am actually saying something to some people, although I may not be at the moment. So, welcome to the first live Q&A. I'm not actually sure if anyone's going to turn up to this, if it's a suitable time or not. I've not done too much at this time before, but the reason for doing this is I was asked a few questions on YouTube, and some of them really detailed questions, and if I'd have put responses in there, they'd be huge. So I thought, well, better just to do a video. And then I thought to myself, well, I'm still practicing streaming, I'm still practicing this live stuff, might as well do it as a live Q&A, and then if people do turn up to it, then they can always ask a few questions on the fly as well, a few follow-up questions, we can get a discussion going. If not, it's fine, I'm still recording it, and what that means is I can just still post this up onto YouTube as if I would have done just responding to the questions that have been asked. But first of all, what I might as well do is, given that it's live, I hope, might as well bring some breaking news. So there have been a couple of things, just literally in the last hour. First one is another bot ban announced by Blizzard. Third one, I think, this expansion. It really sounds like they're trying to clamp down on it. I'm not sure whether they are or not, but certainly I'm sure this is the third one that's been announced. I remember the first time, and we in the guild I was in at the time, we suddenly had like a new trial mysteriously disappear. And they didn't get in touch with us or anything like that later. And even when we saw them on Battle.net, they didn't say anything. So I think we know what happened to them. And then another one was announced later on. Lo and behold, another trial mysteriously disappeared. So yeah, I hope no one's disappeared from the guild I'm in now. Oh dear. And then the other bit is that there is a new beta build going up at the moment. One of the questions we were going to come to, in order to answer it, I was going to do a bit of gameplay on the Legion Live on a training dummy just to show something. It's not actually going to be possible at the moment because it's down, and when they're putting a new build up, the servers come down for quite a long time, some hours. So I'm not going to be able to go until tomorrow. And this is one of the hazards. It's just as well I didn't say I was going to be live streaming tonight, because of course that would have snookered it completely. It is the sort of thing that could happen at any time. So when I put my schedule on, this is why I always say do follow me on Twitter, because I'm going to update on Twitter, because that's the easiest place to do it. And obviously if anything like that did happen on a time that I'm going to be live streaming, then that's where I would say it. Okay, so what we will do is I'm just going to get rid of this, and we might as well just go straight to the questions. Hang on a minute, that doesn't seem to be working. Connect. Why isn't that connected? Okay, hi. If there's anyone there, by the way, it's like a seance. Is there anybody there? Then please say something at some point, and maybe in 15 seconds after the little delay, I will get a response. I'm not sure how much of this is working. This is the first time that I've used this software live. I've had a play about with it, of course, non-live, but of course a lot of the features rely on you streaming. If I'm not streaming, I can't really test it. But yeah, so on to the first question that I'd had, which I'm going to have to scroll down here. And it's quite a simple one. It's a common one I've been asked as well. I mean, I get questions sometimes on the YouTube videos that I do. I also get emailed questions, and this is quite a common one. And it's also quite a common assumption that will our priority stats be haste and mastery? And the reason people are assuming this is because obviously haste is always traditionally good for us because it reduces the cooldown on our abilities, and people are particularly minded about judgment. Of course, people know that the new mastery, it's not working like mastery does in live. In live, mastery basically buffs a number of our abilities. In Legion, it sort of does. It only buffs our holy power spenders, no builders, but only if we've got the judgment debuff active on our target, or the thing that's getting walloped. So people naturally think, well, if we can reduce the cooldown on judgment, we can have an increased uptime on the judgment debuff. But that's only true up to a point, because we don't need to have the judgment debuff active all times, because when we're finished spending our holy power, we have to build it back up again, and the abilities that do that don't benefit from the mastery. So we're fine with some judgment downtime. All we need is just enough haste that we get a reasonably smooth rotation. As for mastery itself, yes, very powerful stat for single target, especially when there's no ad swapping. But if we're going to have ad swapping, or we're going to have AoE, mastery actually drops in value quite a lot. It can actually drop to 0, which means we might actually not want mastery for certain types of fight. We raise the spectre, really, of wanting different sets of gear. Maybe even the same pieces of gear, but with different enchants. So that's the response to that particular one. Now, the next question that sort of followed on from this, do we want to reduce our judgment downtime to 0 through high haste levels? As I've just noted there, no, we don't. Because that wouldn't make any sense. It would help in target swapping just because it comes off cooldown earlier, but we're wasting haste, which could be used on something like crit, unnecessarily, as I say. If I show now, let me try and show you something. So let's just, hang on, I'm just going to get something up here. If I find some mobs to attack in a moment. This is, I was streaming this yesterday. So all I'm really doing is building up holy power, then using judgment. I'd not even always wait until 5 holy power, don't need that, because I know that during the judgment window, I effectively can only usually get 2 spenders out in that time. And it really doesn't matter whether I get those 2 spenders out really quickly and then waste the rest of the judgment debuff building more holy power, or I use 1 spender, have to build up a bit more, then use another before it fades. The only time you're realistically going to be able to use 3 is if either you've got Divine Purpose in that procs, or if you've got Wake of Ashes talented with the Ashes to Ashes, which means that that ability generates 5 holy power, and you do a couple of spenders, then use that and get another one. And even then it's tight. It's really tight to get 3 out under any circumstances. So that's the answer to that one. So I'm just going to stop this. Oh my god, hate that. Excuse me, this thing, my mouse wheel doesn't work on this scrolling down with the questions. Right, the next question is the rotation. It says, what's the rotation like, especially with execution sentence, seems tight with the judgment window. This is what I wanted to show you live, but as I say, beta build going up, servers have come down, can't access the beta at the moment. It is awkward at the moment. I think it will be largely a case of practice, and I haven't practiced it that much at the moment because execution sentence is only good for single target stuff. If there's any AoE to be done, or there's any target swapping, or a lot of target swapping, or just, you know, when you're doing dungeon stuff, really execution sentence is not the way to go. It's far more likely to be final verdict. So my execution sentence practice has been recently, at any rate, has been largely limited to training dummies. It is awkward. There's no getting away from that. Oh, just got a question there. That's a good one. Crusader Ceratus, is it worth picking execution sentence over final verdict? Only when it's pure single target. If it's pure single target, execution sentence will do more damage than final verdict. However, if it's like a lot of fights where you've got, okay, you're on the boss for a bit, boss for a bit, boss for it, loads of ads, and then, you know, and that situation repeating itself, then yes, final verdict is almost certainly going to be the way. It's impossible to say for certain at the moment because things haven't been tuned. They are tuned reasonably well at the moment, but of course every time they make a slight tweak here or there, they've got to retune stuff. But final verdict is going to be better on anything other than what you would call a pure single target fight. And another point you're noting here is about Ashbringer traits. This is also worth mentioning. Like, traditionally, what you might do when a new expansion is coming out is you might find guides that say, well, what your rotation, what things are going to do the most damage to your priority system. Little bit trickier this time because traits on your Ashbringer, many of those traits increase the damage done by baseline abilities. And depending on what path you choose to take, which again is something I wanted to switch to live just to show you now, but I can't, server's down, is going to vary for different people. Like at the moment, I'm not 100% sure the route I'm going to take. I am minded at the moment to go to Ashes first. Now, originally I was going to do that was because one, it's the quickest one to get to, and two, because it is the one that makes you Wake of Ashes generate 5 holy power, and not only do I think that's the best one, but also until you get that, your rotation isn't going to be as it will end up being, if you see what I mean. But it is actually just as quick, as far as I can tell at the moment now, with recent changes, to get to Echo of the High Lord, which is the one that when you use Templar's Verdicts or Divine Storm, it does another sneaky one as well after it. Not as powerful a one. It's not like doing a double one. So now I'm not so sure. I still think I'll probably go Ashes to Ashes. But it is worth bearing in mind different ability. And where this will really manifest itself is when do you use Divine Storm? How many mobs do you use Divine Storm on? It will vary. Like when I do the guides for this, I won't be able to tell you. I will be able to tell you how you can work it out. But I won't be able to tell you because it will be different for you and for I. Because our Divine Storm, relative to Templar's Verdict, which presumably will be the other choice, will change. So for some people it might be 2 mobs. For someone else you might need 3 mobs before Divine Storm's worth using. But yes, Final Verdict is a good one because it is more versatile. It's definitely the one I would say for dungeons, of course, especially as we're not going to be encouraged to be changing talents. But it's certainly more versatile, and for most people I would say Final Verdict, yeah. But Execution Sentence on raid fights for single target bosses where there's little, if any, adds that you'll have to switch to. Or if it's like maybe 1 ad, you'd still probably use Execution Sentence. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. If not, do keep asking. Now, the next question I had via the YouTube. Well, it wasn't really a question, this was more of a statement. I do want to tackle it really quickly. It says here, I guess as long as you get as many verdicts as possible and Wake of Ashes, since it does nice damage in a judgment window. No to the Wake of Ashes, because that is not a holy power spender, so it doesn't benefit from mastery. The only time you would use Wake of Ashes during the judgment window is if you've got it traded and it's generating you 5 holy power because you just spent it. But just remember what I said. It's not. It's really it sounds really awful, by the way, this Colossus Mass judgment thing. But on a single target situation, it's not actually that awful. Execution Sentence is sort of not great. But again, practice, I'm sure that'll be fine. But the actual judgment debuff thing on single target is actually fine because you will only get 2 spenders off in that time, except, as I mentioned before, but if you've only just joined, there's a few more people I've just seen join. If you've got your 5 holy power, use judgment, and then you spend maybe a Crusader Strike, spend again, Wake of Ashes really quickly, and then get another one off, and even that will be tight. That will be, maybe you can get 3 off. The only sensible time to get 3 off is if either you get a Fires of Justice proc, and what that does, for those that don't know, it's a form of Crusader Strike, which again is my favourite on that row, which it does a couple of things, but one of the things it does, it gives you a 25% chance when you use it for your next Holy Power spender to cost 1 Holy Power fewer. So for Templar's Verdict, it will only cost 2. So if you've got 5 Holy Power, you could use a Templar's Verdict. In theory, you could use another Templar's Verdict straight after it if the Conviction basically procs. The only other thing is if you've got Divine Purpose, and for solo win I favour that, and for dungeons as well, although Sanctified Wrath is going to pull away in challenging content, and you might get a Divine Purpose proc. But in general you only got 2, so it's not actually really stressful to keep it up, because it's, like I've said before, it's a case of Use your judgment when you've got, say, 4 or 5 holy power. You don't even need 5. 4's fine. Use a spender, build up again, use another spender. You will get the spender out before the window closes. Unless you had, like, no holy power when you use judgment. And why would you do that? Or you might use 2 spenders really quickly, but then it will take you longer to build up for another spender than the judgment window will last. So you're always going to get 2 off. And in rare situations, or uncommon situations, maybe 3. Okay. But yeah, Wake of Ashes isn't going to work. The only things that work are holy power spenders. So Execution Sentence, and I'll come back to Execution Sentence because this is really important. Execution Sentence is a spender, so it benefits from the mastery. But of course, you need the judgment debuff up when it lands. And just got a question again from Divine Tempest, so I'll come to that in a moment. So when your Execution Sentence lands, that's when you need the judgment debuff. So what you don't want to use is Execution Sentence, then judgment straight away, because then the window won't be up when it lands. Because it depends on your haste levels, but to get your haste levels down to the point where it will easily fit inside a judgment window, you'd need like over 40% haste, and that's not happening. People, because going back to the stat priority, people are thinking, okay, we want to load up on haste. You won't be able to. You just won't be able to, because the way secondary stats are working is changing. Blizzard announced some time ago that they're going to reduce the amount of secondary stats you get on gear as you go up the item levels. So you won't be able, or they aim at any rate, we'll see how it works in practice, but their aim is that we should not be able to get very, very high values of secondary stats. So it's not worth chasing after something. So on to Divine Tempest. What's my view on that? In theory, I like it. What Divine Tempest does, for those that don't know, it's one of our gold dragon traits, the one that does extra ability. So when you use Divine Storm, it basically goes forward 20 yards and damages everything in its path. It will never hit one mob more than once, so you'll never get double hits from it. But it means it's a bit like the Demon Hunter I-Beam. Just goes forwards 20 yards, damage everything in the path. What I don't like about it is that it does not, like a lot of our AoE, work with our mastery. Because even if you take a greater judgment, which will spread your judgment debuff to a small number, like 3 other mobs, it only spreads it to 3 other mobs, and you can't choose them. If you've got more than 3 extra mobs, you don't get to choose which one it goes on within 8 yards. Now, Divine Tempest is going forward 20 yards. So stuff that it's going through is not going to benefit from mastery. The other thing is judging it as well. It's like, how do you judge 20 yards? You know, sometimes you think to yourself, because it comes down to when do you use Templar's Verdict, when do you use Divine Storm? Let's say you're surrounded by a load of mobs. Of course, you'd use Divine Storm. If there's anything, you'd have to position yourself carefully so that if there's anything over there, you're getting that. But let's say you've just got the boss there. There's some ads over there. You sort of think they're within 20 yards. If they are, and it hits them, it's worth using Divine Storm. But if they're not, and it misses them, you should have used Templar's Verdict on the boss. So you're going to have to be quite good at judging 20 yards, is another thing. Sorry, let me just see if I've missed anything out on here. Do you like to see it reworked so it does a kind of pulsing AoE? I'm not keen on pulsing AoE, I have to say. Because it's very difficult to time, especially when you get ads popping up that might be destroyed quite quickly. They only need to be destroyed by everyone else in the raid between pulses, and that's not great. So no, I quite like the fact that it's a beam thing. I just don't like the fact that it's not affected by mastery. And Blizzard, they're not going to change this. Blizzard have said that they want our mastery to be a single target stat only. And they came under a lot of pressure about this. No one has backed them up on this, and yeah. By the way, thanks for the content. I don't think it really is dark times as such. I think most Retribution Paladins will be fine. I can't speak for PvP. I think it will be fine for most. Not necessarily all. I mean, I'm not sure of my raid spot, I have to say, in the guild I currently am for Legion. But I think for most people it will sort of be okay. It plays fine. Like, you've watched me streaming. I'll be streaming some more again. I've got I'll go over the schedule at the end of this program, but it's also on the slide that appears here once I sort of stop streaming. And I hope I don't bitch about it when I'm selling. I'm quite happy with the Retribution Paladin in most cases. It's just literally when you're trying to maximize damage in a raid, which is quite important. Because whenever I have to target switch or move to other ads that's some distance away, which is still target switching, or there's like AoE situations, it's just really dodgy. And if we were able to compensate by being able to do absolutely balls to the wall damage on the boss and just say, well, AoE is for other people. Because remember, I mean, a lot of people get hung up about overall damage. Overall damage matters bog all. What matters is damage on priority targets. I mean, there's been plenty of fights. There's been some, like, all the way through WoD, there's tended to be 1 or 2 fights where I've been right at the top of damage when we've been killing bosses in each tier. But those have not often been the ones I felt were my best fights. The ones I felt were my best fights sometimes are ones where I was only like doing middling damage or maybe higher middling damage. But where I can say is, this priority mob, this thing that had to die really, really quickly, otherwise we would have wiped, I'm top damage on it. So I was able to do that through WoD. If we're able to do that in Legion, again, that would be okay. I'm just not sure it is going to be the case. Right, let's have to scroll up. I wish my mouse wheel would work on this. I don't know why it doesn't. So the next question I had is Blade of Wrath better for fluid rotation? So for those that don't know, Blade of Wrath is one of the versions of Blade of Justice, which is a new ability. And what it does is it does less damage than the standard Blade of Justice, but it has a much shorter cooldown. Now, what this means is in a certain amount of time, you can, because it generates 2 holy power each time, you can be generating more holy power. So although you'll do less damage with your Blade of Wrath, you will generate more holy power, get off more final verdicts, divine storms, whatever. I mean Templar's verdicts, of course. The thing is, though, it's only good if you're going to use it off cooldown. So it's a case of judge yourself. If you feel your rotation is a little bit slow and you're having a bit too much downtime, then by all means try Blade of Wrath. When it first, in its current form, was introduced in the alpha, I actually used it quite a bit. I got to quite like it. But I have to say, at the moment, when I'm leveling on beta, I'm still only level 102. Because servers kept going down. I've been doing other things as well. Not least of which is practicing with this. And I'll be doing some more tomorrow, if the servers are up. I haven't been using Blade of Wrath because the haste I have, which at the moment is about 17%, I don't feel I have a lot of downtime. Every now and then you do. It's you know how it works. It's sometimes you will just have some downtime. Most of the time I don't feel I'm stood around not doing anything. And if you are, you can always use a spender and then build it back up. As long as you can build it back up for when your judgment's ready, it's fine. So I haven't really felt the need to use Blade of Wrath. In fact, I think it would be wasteful because I don't think I would use it off cooldown. But it's a personal thing. If you feel, it depends on your haste level as well. If you feel that it is a little bit slow and you'd like an ability to come off cooldown a bit quicker, then by all means this. The other thing to bear in mind is that I use the Fires of Justice talent for Crusader Strike. That reduces the cooldown by a second, which means that at my 17% haste, I actually have a 3-second recharge time on Crusader Strike. And remember, it's got 2 charges. So Crusader Strike doesn't stay off cooldown for very long at all. So I find the rotation fine. 6th question. This is an easy one. Does Sanctified Wrath benefit from the Ashbringer traits? Yes. Is the simple thing. Yes, it does. It's Sanctified Wrath simply replaces Avenging Wrath, but it is still classed as Avenging Wrath for all purposes. And the traits that have been referred to is there are traits on the Ashbringer, which unfortunately are in an opposite direction to where I'm planning on heading, that increase the duration of your Sanctified Wrath. You can put up to 3 ranks in it. You can also, now this is a point I was thinking about, you can also get relic. When you get relics, these are the things that upgrade your artifact weapon. And they do a couple of things. First of all, they increase the item level of the artifact. And second of all, they will have a rank for one of your artifact traits. And that can increase it above the normal maximum. So this Wrath of the Ashbringer, which increases the duration of Revenging Wrath, it's like up to 3 ranks. But you could get 4 out of 3 if you've also got that rank on a relic. Now, I was doing Val Shirar yesterday on my Paladin. And what happened was, when I finished off the last quest, which was very buggy, so eventually it worked. So I finished Val Shirar, now I'm going to go somewhere else. The last reward was a relic with that specific rank on it. And I thought to myself, this might be a bit wasted, because if I did Val Shirar, now you might get the same sort of relic in the other zones as well. I can't remember, having done it on Alpha. You know, you might well get a relic with that rank on another zone, that's fine. But I know that that relic comes off Tyrande when you finish Val Shirar. So I'm now thinking to myself, maybe I should leave that zone to last, because that relic will be a higher item level if I do that quest as, let's say, a level 110 or even 109 than it is as 102. Because that's the thing about this scaling. The mobs all scale to you. The difficulty of the quest, of course, scales to you. The only place this doesn't happen is Suramar. If you go there, you are getting battered if you're a low level. But also the quest reward scale. So you could get a quest reward at level 102, certain item level. If you did the same quest and got the same quest reward at level 110, it would be a higher item level. So that's worth thinking about. Okay, so Mukaduka. Would you put Ret Paladins into a more single target focus spec or AoE focus spec in Legion? Not an AoE focus spec. I'm not saying we do badly on AoE. Like, if I'm in a real proper AoE situation and I'm using Divine Hammers and I'm going mad with Divine Storm, and I'm not even bothering about Judgment, I'll use it just for the extra damage on the primary target, whatever. I can do decent damage. The problem is, again, it depends on the content you're doing. So on Trash, it'd probably be okay. But still not as good as many others. But on a raid situation where you don't really get AoE, even fights that we call AoE fights are not actually AoE all the time. A lot of the time you're also still focusing something down, and then there's other times when you do an AoE. We just tend to call it an AoE fight if the AoE happens a lot. So in that situation we're not great. But would I put us into a single target focus spec? Only if our damage was very, very high on single target. And although it's competitive, that just means we're doing round about the same as other specs. But if those other specs are doing that amount of damage and are able to do more consistent AoE, there you've got a problem. And of course we wouldn't want to use Divine Hammers on most fights anyway, because 1, it only generates 1 holy power. 2, although the damage is really good in AoE, you need quite a lot of mobs and you need them to be active a lot of the time and around you. So I wouldn't say we were AoE focused at all. Hopefully single target. We'll just have to see on that one. Okay. Crusader Serratus again. Avenging Wrath recently changed from 2 minutes cooldown to 2 minute recharge. Can we expect a similar tier bonus like the tier 18 in the near future? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to replicate that. They will come up with other ones. As far as I know, I don't spend a lot of time looking at stuff that doesn't really matter. So, you know, like the data mined set bonuses, a lot of people looking at them and thinking ahead. But we're thinking a long time ahead. Because remember, the set bonuses aren't available during the first raid. It's following the same pattern as WoD. Like we had High Maul in WoD, 7 boss instance, no tier set in it. The tier set came in Blackrock Foundry. Same sort of things happening in Legion. The first raid is not going to have those. So for me, that's in the future. But the set bonus was, and still is as far as I know, related to Conviction, which was a baseline ability at the start of Alpha. But isn't anymore. So I don't think they've tackled that yet. But for me, it's not a priority because that's not something I'm going to have to worry about, I don't even know, until probably 2017. Because I am hoping they're not going to rush out the second raid. So Mukaduka, how How's Ret Paladin's ramp up time when swapping to high priority target? It's absolutely terrible. In fact, what I will just do, more, so I had this one ready. I'm just going to connect to the chat again. I don't know why. So I can actually see what you're saying. This fight in More of Souls is an absolute arsehole because I've just ripped this. This is up here because I've literally ripped it off one of my update videos. Because you can see there's a lot of target switching. And the problem is I might use Judgment on the boss and then suddenly an ad comes up and I think, I do need to... Because these ads, you do need to get them down. It's not really the sort of thing where you want to think, oh, I'll just leave it to other people. It would be nice if we could leave it to other people. And maybe when we're doing pre-made groups for like Mythic, with people guildies for Mythic, Dungeon Plus, that sort of thing, maybe realistically we can. But my damage on this particular fight was appalling, and I compared it to like the damage I did with the same people on a different boss, and it was much worse. And it is just because I am using spenders on mobs that don't have the Judgment debuff, and that is just absolute nightmare. And if I use the Judgment on the ad, it's gonna... I mean, that one didn't die too quickly, but I think that's because people in this group are not switching to the ads either. Like the Death Knight, you can't see because my head's in the way. Shall I move out of the way? He was way ahead. He wasn't switching to the ads at all. He was just sticking to the boss, the little bastard. But if I'd have done that as well, we'd have wiped. We'd have just wiped. This is actually quite a tough fight. Doesn't help when I'm standing and shit like that, but never mind. But you cannot leave the ads up. You cannot leave them up. So on a fight like this, where it's a lot of target switching, our movement doesn't help. The fact that we can't use Judgment debuff to its full effects doesn't help. It's not a great fight. Not a good one at all. I mean, I know I did more damage than the other one there, but he was dead. So since Judgment is now basically Colossus Smash for Ret, do you think Arms and Ret are very similar in nature? No. I'm just going to go back somewhere. I'm just going to go back to this one. No, I don't. And the reason for that is that Arms in an AoE situation, first of all, they have access to Bladestorm. We don't. Now, our AoE ability, like, we don't have one anymore. In live, it's Light's Hammer. And of course, we know that's not as good as Bladestorm, but it's not bad. We don't have anything at all like that in Legion. We have Consecration in Tier 1, and I cannot moan at Blizzard at this because people have been asking and whining for this thing since Cataclysm, since it stopped, since the end of Cataclysm when it's taken away. And I don't know why. It's an iconic ability, I absolutely get that. But it's a crap ability for Rets because it just does its AoE all the time, and the duration of it is equal to the cooldown, which means you have it up all the time, which basically means it's weak. Whereas if you have an ability, like if you have an ability that lasts 10 seconds and a cooldown of 10 seconds, you keep it up all the time. If you have an ability that lasts 10 seconds with a 1 minute cooldown, you can only have it up a maximum of 1/6 of the time. So what you do is you scale up the damage during that 10 seconds to make it better. And in a realistic situation, you don't have ads up all the time. You have them zone in, so what you can, for a short amount of time. So what you want is an ability that only works for 10 seconds every minute or something like that. And we don't have that. They do. The other thing is Colossus Smash, of course, isn't as quick as ours. We are going to have our Judgment active a lot more than they'll have Colossus Smash. Colossus Smash has got a much longer cooldown. So we don't have that. The other thing is, for AoE situations, they get a talent that means that their Colossus Smash just spreads to AoE. Ours goes to another 3 targets. Theirs just goes everywhere. So I don't think it's as good as Arms. And the other thing about Arms is they at least have the... I know it's going to be difficult with trying to keep up artifact weapons and all the rest of it. But in theory, they have the option of falling back on a second DPS spec as well in form of Fury. Now, I know that is going to be difficult because in the early days, that's probably not going to be realistic because you won't be able to keep up 2... If you kept up 2 artifacts at the same rate, both of them would be poor. But eventually they will have that option, as we don't. So, no, I don't. And I'm not an Arms Warrior expert, but just the fact that they have the on-demand AoE that is much more powerful than we have access to, because we will never use Consecration. There is no situation where Consecration can possibly be any good. They've put it in because people asked for it. And when I mentioned this to some of the people who did ask for it, they said, well, what we really want to do was baseline. Be even worse baseline, because then we have to try and fit it into our rotation. It'd be counted on our damage. Bloody hell. And the other thing about arms, as I say, is they do have a talent, which they can't use all the time. It's got a long cooldown. But in an AoE situation, they can just go Colossus Smash on everything. We can do Judgment on a few things. If there's lots of things AoE, we can just do it on a few things. So I don't think it's as good. So let's have a look while we wait if anyone else got any other questions. Let's just see. I've only got 2 more questions, by the way, so do keep them coming if you've got other questions. Otherwise, we'll be coming to the end of it. Now, here's one that I've been asked in emails as well as on the YouTube as well. And I better tackle it even though I haven't got an answer. How do Rets compare with other melee DPS? Now, the first thing to note about this is one, I'm not a theory crafter. I might do some napkin maths, that's about it. The actual people I will call theory crafters are the people who code APLs for Sims and work all this stuff out. And they will work out how much DPS we should do under certain conditions with all sorts of different talents and trinkets and anything else that they have the data for. And it's a thankless task that takes ages, and every time Blizzard tweaks something, they have to go back and change it all again. And these sims might not be accurate because all it takes is for someone to have forgotten something or to have missed a change in something, and the sim's all wrong. So let's say I mentioned Fires of Justice before. So what that does is, one, it means that we can potentially get a proc that causes our next Holy Power spender to cost 1 Holy Power fewer. But it also reduces the recharge time on Crusader Strike by 1 second. Now, if they miss out that, if they do the conviction proc thing and forget that it's reducing the cooldown by 1 second, that's going to throw the sims out. And it only takes something that simple. But the other thing is, they're obviously not going to produce loads and loads of sims in lots of different situations. They're just going to do a patchwork fight. Because, again, it's a lot of work they're having to do and it's a lot of time spent for something where at any moment it could all change. Like there's a build going up now. So there might have been some poor theory crafter tonight putting the finishing touches to some work they're doing. Now they see there's a new build going up. Of course, it might not change anything about the classes. Of course, they could just be adding stuff to Suramar. But equally, it might. And then they've got to go back to the drawing board and change lots of things. But what I gather is that we are classed as competitive. But that's a patchwork fight. We're not going to get a patchwork fight. We're going to get a fight where we're having to run around. We're going to get fights where there's lots of AoE. In that situation, how we're going to compare with other melee, I am not hopeful, I have to say. I'm not going to be doom and gloom. I'm going to play Ret at the end of the day. If I thought I was going to be hopeless, then I'd just be giving up now. I wouldn't be streaming. I wouldn't be doing YouTube. I'd just be thinking, that's it. The game's over for me. I'll go and play something else. I don't think that. I will struggle through. I struggled through the last half of TBC as Ret. I'm pretty sure I can struggle through whatever comes up. And it's not going to be bad in all situations. I just fear that it's going to be bad for some fights. That's all. Okay, so we've got Mukaduka, we've got a couple of things in now. So, all right, so here is something I've seen since the start of Alpha I think could be really OP. What do you think of the potential of class stacking Shadow Priest and Ret Paladins for the somewhat... I don't think... Right, Surrender to Madness. I don't think Shadow Priests are going to want to die. I'm not entirely sure they're going to use Surrender to Madness, I have to say. They will only use it if they can keep it up. And I think in a lot of fights they're not going to be able to. I don't think they're going to use the ability. I'm going to be honest. I mean, who in their right mind is going to take a talent that will kill them? Who in their right mind is going to say to their raid leader, okay, yeah, we're doing progress and I realise people are going to die and we're going to need to battle res them. But how about this for an idea? Let's say I deliberately die and then you battle res me. You save the battle reses for me. I don't think that's going to go down very well. But there is the thing as well. Like the Retribution ability, which is the one that means we do 50% extra damage when someone within 40 yards... I mean, knowing my luck, the little bastards will die more than 40 yards away. I'll get nothing. But yeah, if someone dies within 40 yards, you do 50% extra damage. That's going to happen during progress. As long as you are not the first to die in your group, as long as you can stay alive longer than most of the people, you're going to get that buff quite a lot on progress. And it's another thing that's quite awkward to tune. So we can look at the Sims and say, okay, we're competitive. Maybe when we factor Retribution in, as long as someone is dying when we can be hitting the boss and not when we're having to move between bosses, actually, that's bunging up our damage. And if it happens during Avenging Wrath, all to the better. But I don't think Shadow Priests are going to voluntarily die for us. Oh, right, okay. Has it changed? Prevention, hold on. Yeah, you would better explain that, because maybe something's changed then. I'll just answer this one in the meantime, what you explain it. So is the Shield of Vengeance going to be viable in raid scenarios? Yes. It kind of promotes the quality of life gameplay. With one of the legendaries, it absolutely does. There is a legendary, which means that if you get a killing blow, it puts you back on just one health point, but it gives you an extra special Shield of Vengeance, so it does double the absorb shield. So yes, people are going to look to abuse this, and it is going to be quite difficult. People are probably going to look to abuse it alongside Divine Intervention. It was the case that you couldn't benefit from the cheat death of Divine Intervention if Forbearance was active. No, hold on, let me get this right. No, it's a quality. Sorry, that's right. A quality if that was active. But now that it is, so there are going to be people, I think, absolutely are going to use this. Because the thing with that legendary as well, with that extra special Shield of Vengeance, because I was testing this out. If you saw the legendary video, you'll see. Is like, I'll let something kill me. It was the Shield of Vengeance legendary that... Was it? It was one of them. They didn't both proc at the same time anyway. It was one that proc first. I think actually it was the Divine Intervention that proc first. And then I let it kill me again, and it was the Shield of Vengeance thing. But people are going to... The problem with Shield of Vengeance, of course, is it does damage, but it only does damage if it's fully absorbed. If it's absorbed a little bit, it does no damage. So you can liken it to Death Knight's AMS, except that a Death Knight's AMS, even if they don't use the whole thing, they get some DPS benefit from having some of it absorbed. We only get the benefit if it's all absorbed. So we literally have to make sure that we're going to take some damage from it. So what we're probably going to do is we're going to tie all sorts of things in with Synergy. We're going to want Shield of Vengeance active, Divine Intervention equality, taunt the boss, let it hit us. It'll break through our Shield of Vengeance, so that'll do some damage to it. Then it'll kill us, so Divine Intervention will proc. Then we'll use equality before healers heal us up really quickly and do some damage. That's not going to be viable on all fights, by the way. And I don't think tanks are going to be very happy me randomly taunting. I don't think the other melee are going to be very happy. I'd have to run in front of the boss first. But that's the sort of thing that's going to happen. I suppose if the tanks did like a smash that would one-shot a DPS, you could just stand in that, as long as it happens every 3 minutes. But I can see people doing stupid things with it. Yeah, it's stupid. It's a crap design. Right, okay. Sorry, did you say something about Surrender Madness? Big fan of push accounts, the last phase of... Yes, yeah. I can see... I mean, there is that potential. I just don't... I'm not sure Retribution Paladins have got the credibility for you to do something just to buff our damage for 10 seconds. But if it happens to be good for the Shadow Priest to use this thing, then yes. But I need to look up Surrender to Madness again then, because if it worked as it did when I was playing about with Priest, which admittedly is a little while ago now, what it did was if you let this thing fade, if you weren't able to maintain it, you would die. And in a period where you can't do any DPS for a bit, then that could happen. But I don't think... I'm not sure that ret stacking for that is going to be a thing. Ret stacking would only be a thing if the Greater Blessings could stack as they did, which I don't think is going to be the case. Yeah, it's only for a few seconds though, like you're saying, that's the problem. And it assumes that it's the Retribution Paladin that's living where everyone else is dying. And although our defensives look pretty good in theory, in practice, to get our best one, we need to not take a movement speed increase. I mean, we'll just have to see. I just don't think so. I don't think top guilds are seriously considering it. So yeah, I don't think so. And also, you've got to consider, what do we bring to the raids? Other melee bring things that, like warriors still bring stuff to the raid. They've still got a raid cooldown, which is really useful. We don't. We bring. There is some utility in like Greater Blessing of Wisdom and Greater Blessing of Might even. Very niche ability, utility. Blessing of Protection has the potential to be useful, but quite a long cooldown. Although now the Ashbringer trait ability reduces it to like 3.5 minutes, but that's still quite a long cooldown. Mana regen, yeah. Mana and health regen, in fact. I'm not sure the health regen, because you could actually think of it being on a tank, but I don't think the health regen is significant enough. Maybe the mana regen. But boomkins are always good though, aren't they? There's never any shortage of boom. In fact, boomkins and hunters have saved me when I've been a recruitment officer in WoD, because there's been specs that have actually been quite powerful, but there's loads of them. Mages and warlocks have actually been quite hard to recruit. Rogues as well, strangely enough. But boomkins and hunters are 2 a penny. Oh, Atheru, hiya. Question, considering the upcoming change to how talent swapping will work, do you think the talent trees will need to be adjusted for it? I don't think they're going to adjust the talent trees, no. Whether I don't like the talent system at all. I'm not saying I wish they had gone back to the old system, because I understand the issue they had with the old talent system before MOP, but I don't like this system. I think there are other games where they have better systems. But it's the system it is, and I don't think they will change it. I think it all depends on, like, because, I mean, I did the video, if anyone saw, of what I think about this talent swapping thing. If you want to see me completely perplexed, go and watch that. But it all depends on this, like, tome thing, the inscription item, is how expensive is it? If it ends up just being a little bit like the leatherworking drums, then actually that's not hideously expensive. Because when you're soloing, you don't need to change your talents anyway. Who really changes the talents when soloing? I don't. The other thing is, when you're in dungeon, if you're just doing a normal dungeon like a heroic or something where it's not going to be that challenging, you're not going to expect to wipe. Again, there's a talent set that works quite well. Basically, if you take everything down the left-hand side for a general dungeon, that's my advice. That's what I take. But if you're doing tougher content, yes, you want to try and maximise your talent, but maybe this inscription thing is the route to that. But actually, that's actually going to stuff us, because the problem is, unless they change this, when someone changes talents, their Greater Blessing fades, and we can't cast Greater Blessing in combat. So you might, if you ever watch me in dungeon, you might see me keep checking. I'm constantly checking that the people I've got the Greater Blessing on still have it, because if they change talents, it's not going to be there anymore. And I can't put it on in combat anymore. So if someone changes a talent just before they pull, and we're in combat, it's not up. And I'm not getting the damage from it if it's might, which it mostly is. So that's my view on that. I just don't like the current talent tree system at all. But I don't see them changing it because of this thing at all. With Divine Intervention being on the same tier as Seal of Light and Divine Steed, are the Agramized Stride going to be the first legendaries to target the quality of life? The problem with, I mean, it all depends. We can't expect to get multiple legendaries. We'll just have to get what we get. We will probably get the shit that doesn't do us any good at all. That, like, means our Flash of Light does cost less mana or something stupid. And they'll just basically be stat bags if my luck's anything to go by. But if we had a choice, the boots, what you're noting there, that mean that our speed is increased by an amount equal to our haste, is not going to be as good as any of the ones that provide either a DPS increase. There are 4 legendaries actually really good. 2 of them provide a DPS increase, a very significant one. And 2 of them are very good defensive ones. And I would take any 4 of those over the boots, even as much as I moan about speed. Because we're only going to get so much haste anyway. I think in the alpha, when I got my Paladin to 110, it was like 11%, something like that. I mean, we'll see. Probably around about next week, I'll be getting to 110 on this one. Speaking of which, I don't think it's going to take as long as some people were saying as well, because I had heard like roughly 3 hours. I think Az from Heals vs Babyface was saying about 3 hours a level. It's been taking me about 2 hours a level, and that's with lag. So, and that's with like the crap gear as well. So with better gear when it goes live, I think it could be. I mean, and that's with me as well, not like going bang, 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 bang. You know, I don't rush through these things. So I don't think it'd be more than 2 hours a level, really. But yeah, I don't think the boosts, they sound good, but because we're limited to 1 legendary, yes, when we've built up the order hall, and it's going to take a long time, it's months before we'll get to that point, but we get the last little sort of, because the order halls get talents, they get little talent tree, and the last one in it allows you to equip 2 legendaries at once. By the time we get that, I strongly suspect, or I hope, we'll have at least 2 really good ones, and again, the boots aren't going to get a look in. So unless it happens to be the first reasonable one you get, I don't see it being used. So, Mukaduka, in high mobility situations where melee are typically considered inferior, Blackhand, actually, if we were allowed to hit the boss, we could do a lot of damage. Rets did a lot of damage on that fight when they were allowed to hit the boss. The problem was they were generally not. I was not. In phase 2, I got to hit the boss for a little bit, and then I got sent to the other side of the room to bait fire. So basically what I was doing for most of phase 2 was standing still, and then when I saw some fire coming, moving a little bit to the right or a little bit forwards, making liberal use of divine protection. So my damage on that fight was appalling. And then when we got to phase 3, we're also pretty good at soaking like stuff as well, and taking the smashers. So that's the reason for that. But we had no problem doing good damage on Blackhand if someone said to us, just hit the boss. But where there are high mobility situations, which is definitely the case in a lot of fights in Legion that we've seen so far, that unfortunately I have not been able to try because my guild doesn't do them, but I've certainly seen them, and there have been Rets who have done them. Yes, that is my biggest fear. Like, utility is usually my gripe, because as much as it upsets a certain guildmate of mine, for the last 2 expansions, there have not been any Retribution Paladins in any of the top 10 world first kills of like the hardest bosses. Now, you don't expect them in every guild, because we are one of those 3 classes where we've only got 1 DPS spec. That puts us at a disadvantage. It's not very flexible. So Shadow Priests and Windwalker Monks, similar thing. But you do see some of them in these top guilds, and you don't see Rets in them. And that is not because we can't do the damage, it's because we didn't bring anything else to the table. And that's always going to be my main gripe. But in Legion, I just worry about the move. And it's not the fact that we don't have the movement to deal with it. Because when it comes to PvE, it doesn't matter how powerful you are. What matters is how powerful you are compared to other people fighting for your raid spot. And if others have an easier time of it, then you can be a liability unless with greater skill you make up for it somehow, which is why it's notable that in the top guilds you might get the odd Rets in the odd guild, but not very many. But in guilds like heroic guilds, especially guilds that are maybe still progressing now, you can easily see 3 or 4 Rets in a guild group, no problem, because if you better play, it doesn't really matter what class you do play. So I don't see any advantage in a high mobility situation. In a high mobility situation, we are going to have to take something, and it's what you take. Divine Steed is going to be the obvious one for me, but if you have to be moving for more than 45 seconds, it's a bit of a problem, and it means you don't have that Divine Intervention. Seal of Light, my issue with Seal of Light, actually 20% movement speed is fine for a lot of situations. It's just the fact that I might use it and I've got a load of Holy Power and I've spent a load of Holy Power giving me a movement boost that might last a minute or more. Well, I don't need it for a minute or more. I'm not gonna, if I'm running around for a minute or more, I'm not doing any damage. I might as well just stood still and died. So, yes, hopefully that's answered your question. So it'll be coming up to the end, so be asking any more if you've got any more at the moment. I've got one last question, I believe, which is about Virtue's Blade. So why does Virtue's Blade exist? Rets have no crit synergy. So to remind you of what Virtue's Blade is, it's another form of Blade of Justice, which means that crits, instead of double damage, do triple damage. Now, the first thing I would say about the Rets have no crit synergy is, by taking Virtue's Blade, we create crit synergy. But I take the point is we don't have it with other things. We sort of might. Now, bear in mind what I said about AoE before. In an AoE situation, our mastery drops in value. It's difficult to say how much it drops because it depends on circumstances. Like, if ads spawn in on a predictable rate and we are able to get greater judgment and use that judgment when they spawn in, and there's only 3 of them who spawn in, then actually mastery is still pretty good for us, and as long as they spawn in around us and around the boss that we're hitting. However, if they come in at a more unpredictable rate, or there's more of them, or we're having to target swap, then mastery's value can drop as far as it could potentially be 0. It could potentially have 0 value during those moments. Whereas crit is always good. So it might well be that after a certain amount of haste, we start wanting to get a certain amount of crit. And in the alpha, I actually, although it was leveling gear, and it's not quite the same as when you're in raid gear, I actually had a decent amount of crit. So I was using, I still use Virtue's Blade now. But I was definitely using Virtue's Blade then, because I had like going on for 30% crit, which means it will happen quite a lot, and that does a lot of extra damage. So I actually think Virtue's Blade is a really good one. It's my preferred one. But as I said about the Blade of Wrath before, if you find that the rotation is a little slow, you haven't got much haste, by all means take Blade of Wrath. But I like Virtue's Blade. Okay. So those are the questions I had. So what I'll do, I know there's a delay in me asking you something and responding back. I'll give it another like 15 seconds, see if anyone else posts any questions. If not, oh, we've got one. Look at here. Is there any melee DPS spec that you see being the thorn in the side of all of the melee specs in regards to how good that one spec is for a DPS toolkit utility perspective? No, I don't see one spec as being head and shoulders above all the others. It will depend on the situation I don't think there is one god spec in melee. Thankfully, I suppose. It's just that there are a lot of melee classes. There are more melee specific classes when we come to DPS than there are range. There's like double if you think about it, because we've got paladins that can only be melee, death knights can only be melee, warriors can only be melee. We've got rogues, monks, now demon hunters. So that's 6 that can only be melee if they're going to be DPS. Whereas for range, the only DPS that can only be ranged are mages, priests, and warlocks. Used to be hunters, not anymore. Although if any hunter tries coming into melee, I'm going to smack them. Rogues are not looking that great at the moment. We know they will be. I will always say, if you want a safe bet, if you don't mind what class you play from any other point of view, you just want to make sure that having average ability in your guild will guarantee you a raid spot, then the ones to go for are always mage, warlock, and rogue. I would say in WoD, boomkin, and hunter as well, but that varies from expansion to expansion, but always rogue, warlock, and mage. It's no coincidence that the ones that have the 3 DPS specs are the ones that are always in, because they have another to fall back on. Yes, it's more difficult now with the artifact system, but at the moment, rogues not looking brilliant. But I just think they've changed. The biggest change I would make to Ret, simple, is I would make the judgment thing give us a buff and not debuff. I would just change it to a buff. Most of my moaning disappeared. I would even do that over the movement thing. I would do that over having a baseline movement speed boost. Because the mastery is by far the most annoying thing. The movement can be compensated by, in theory, by other things. I'm not happy about them. Like some people might say, well, if a warlock puts a gate down, you could do the moving out. It's not all that easy because, for example, if you take Zul'Harak, people are familiar with that, especially on Mythic, it's typically the case that a warlock will put a gateway down so that you can use that to get out if you get I forget the name of it. I don't really do these fights much anymore. I did a few yesterday, but not this one. The fire thing that you got to run out of anyway. You drop a puddle of fire. And Fell Surge, is it? Anyway, the problem with that is often when you come to the Demonic Gateway, there's like people stood on it or something like that. Or there might be the purple ads that you've got to steer well clear of. So demonic gateways can be dodgy because suddenly there could be stuff there that makes them inaccessible. Relying on druid roars, if you're the only person that can't move out of it quickly enough, they're not going to use a roar just for you. So movement is an issue. If I was allowed two things, the first would be baseline movement, but if I can only choose one, it's make the judgment debuff a buff on me, so that target switching isn't a problem, AoE isn't a problem, because it just it acts more like a seal, you could argue, that it empowers me to in fact, I wouldn't mind it if they just got rid of judgment. I know people go mad because it's iconic, and just changed it to like a seal type effect, but that's what I would do. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions before we call it quits? And if we do, what I'll do, as I say, I'll put this up on YouTube. Might just do an introduction or something. Put it on YouTube either tonight or tomorrow. See how quickly it renders. I don't know how long this has been going for actually. About an hour at the moment. Blimey. And then if anyone's got any further questions, it's the usual thing. You can just sort of email them to me or post them on this video, and I can do another one at another time. Can't make Seal of Light a passive, even if it's 50%. I don't like Seal of Light. I don't. You mean just we have a passive, movement speed? Yeah, that'd make it. I mean, if we think about the movement boost we get now in live, there's Long Arm of the Law. That's my favourite. That's the one I use most of the time. It's not realistic. Obviously, we couldn't tie it to Judgment. Judgment has too long a cooldown in this, and we need it for our Judgment div. We can't be using it on moving. And there isn't a suitable ability to tie it to either. Speed of Light is like Divine. Speed of Light is better than Divine Steed, actually. So that would be a nice one. And then Pursuit of Justice, which is a similar thing to this, because that gives us the passive movement speed increase, plus an extra amount according to the amount of Holy Power we've got stocked up. Something like that. Either of those, yes, would be not too bad. If either of those were sort of baseline, it would be not too bad. But yeah, Seal of Light as it is now, I wouldn't use it. I would never use it because the risk of, because I'd only ever want to use one Holy Power. If it just cost one Holy Power and lasted 20 seconds, and at the end of that 20 seconds I have the option of using another Holy Power, that would be better. Because I don't want to ever... Why would I ever need movement speed buff for more than 20 seconds? I'm not... While I'm moving around, I'm not doing any damage. I don't want a movement speed for more than that. So, yeah. Because that's the thing that annoys me. It's that, one, we don't have any baseline movement. And the argument has been made by more than one person, well, if you've got... you make up for it with defensive stuff. Well, we don't. And I would argue this way. Let's say that Retribution Paladins have the best defensive toolkit. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't think we do, actually. But just let's say, for the sake of argument. So it's like we've got the best defensives, 0 movement. So compare that to the other end of the scale. Let's say Demon Hunters, who have got the best movement. Does that mean they've got 0 baseline defensives? No, they have a baseline defensive. And quite a powerful one. So it doesn't cut, Same with Warriors. They've got very good movement, not as good as Demon Hunters, but they've still got very good movement. Do they have no defensives? No, they have baseline defensives. So it doesn't work like that. I do not want priests gripping me. I absolutely don't, because they grip me into things. I don't want them touching me. dirty, gnome-loving priests. I was in a guild with a gnome priest once, and that's all they did. They used to think it was funny, gripping me into crap. But yes, okay, yep, thanks for turning up, everyone. Hopefully it was useful. As I say, there will be a few other things just coming up. When I stop streaming here, which I'll do in a couple of minutes, there will be the slide still up there that says what the schedule is. All being well, I'll be streaming tomorrow. I'd like some feedback as well, especially after tomorrow as well. I might ask for some on the times, because I'm very conscious of the fact that when I look at my sort of demographic on YouTube, it's really weird because it's like there's a load of people from US and Canada, and there's a load of people from Northern Europe as well, going as far across as like Finland. And so it covers a lot of time zones. It's not like lots of countries going up and down where it's easy. It's going across. It's not so easy. So I'm hoping that the time I did this was all right. I know it's still relatively early, especially if you're on the west coast of America. But I think most people in America live on the east coast, because I think most of you were descended from Europe, where they got to the east coast and then just stayed there because I don't know whether it's nice or what. Maybe occasionally moved west when there was gold in them there hills, but I think that's about it. But yeah, I'll be streaming tomorrow at 10 o'clock UK time, if the servers are up. I'm not sure what yet. It'll probably just be Retribution Paladin again, doing some leveling. I'm starting a new zone. Saturday, again at 10 o'clock, there's going to be a subs report. So I'm going to do a subscriber report, but live this time. So if you want to turn up to that, you can. If you don't, it doesn't matter, because it's, again, if no one turns up, I'm still recording it. I'm still going to put it on YouTube anyway, so that's fine. Sunday, earlier, 7 o'clock UK time, I'm going to do Havoc Demon Hunter, and then Monday, 10 o'clock UK time, Retribution Paladin again. And I'm probably going to do that for the next couple of weeks. So Sunday, Demon Hunter Day, Monday, Retribution Paladin, and then maybe a few other days just streaming other things as well. I'll keep putting schedules up there. I'll always try and put the schedule for the next week or so up there. And we'll go from there. So thanks very much for coming, and I'll see you later. How do I turn this off?